Welcome to Secrets from the Scene, a show for local musicians who want to improve their music, grow their audience, and learn about Minnesota's music scene. If you're interested in talking about all things music related and meeting interesting people from our local community, you're in the right place. Welcome to Secrets from the Scene. My name is Stephen Helvig, and I'm your host. Today, I'm joined by Alec Glauvitz. Alec is the proprietor of Coffee Break Entertainment, which is a newish company here in the Twin Cities. Coffee Break Entertainment is a booking and events agency helping to connect artists with shows here in the Twin Cities and businesses with events that are going to bring in people via these artists. It's a really, really cool company. Alec's a great guy. There's a lot we're going to talk about today, including advice for going about booking these things. But more than anything, I just want to highlight this as a service. So if you're a new artist and you want to get connected, this is a place to start. But Alec has a history in playing in local bands like many of us do. He attended McNally. He's got a music business degree. He's also branching into things like tour management and basic artist management as well. So without further ado, please welcome Alec.
So if you're ready to party, ready to drink, ready to make those glasses clink, the night is young, grab your wand and raise them up. Whether it's a can or a twist of cap, it could be a Bud Light, Busch or Pabst. It's ready for a good time, everyone's in. Somebody break that six-pack, pass that ice cold beer.
Howdy, folks. How's it going? Thanks for having me, Stephen.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, buddy.
How's your day been so far?
Beautiful. This cup of coffee you made is immaculate, man. Thank you so
It's
much.
hard to beat AeroPress, man.
Hey, Coffee Break Entertainment, I kind of like coffee a lot.
I know. I knew I needed to bring my game when you showed up. So we got to have good coffee ready to go.
Yes, sir.
So
It's great, man. Thank you so much. It's been a great day. Thank you again for having me.
Well, thanks for reaching out. I'm really excited to feature your business and introduce you to more people in the scene. Obviously, you're already well connected. You're working with a lot of bands. I recently discovered your business through Instagram and we connected online. I thought, what a great resource. I really like what you're doing. And I think there's a lot of people that could learn a lot from you about maybe just getting a show from you, but as we're going to get into how to think about what shows you're getting and what the purpose is and all of that. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. Let's start by just talking a little bit about you and what your background is and what has brought you to today where you're running this booking agency.
Yeah, man. So I was a homeschooled kid, homeschooled my whole life. My first public school setting was college, actually, which was pretty wild.
Wow.
So growing up, I was just a video game nerd. And then my story is funny. It's similar to Post Malone, actually. I got Guitar Hero 2, and my dad was watching me play, and he's like, you have like a natural curl to your fingers. You want to play guitar? And I was like, no. And then one Christmas, I got this gigantic, super heavy box, and I was pretty sure it was an Xbox, and it was full of packing peanuts and rocks. And at the very bottom, it was a receipt for my first guitar lesson. And I was so disappointed. I did not want to do it. But I showed up to my first lesson, and Scott Bauer was my first guitar instructor, and he just showed me all of the reins on music. It was immediately a first love, something that I wish I had picked up earlier. I was 13 at the time. And that's how I got into music. And then as I practiced and learned, I had this dream of okay, I got to be a rock star and I got to go to LA. I got to go to New York. I got to go to Nashville. So when I was deciding where to go, I talked with my guitar instructor and I was like, should I go to Berkeley? Should I go to McNally? And Scott Bauer, my instructor, actually went to both. And he said, you'll get a great education at Berkeley, but you'll make great connections at McNally. He's like, everybody there, the student to instructor is on a first name basis. So you'll get a lot from there. So I decided to go to McNally, stay close to home. And dude, I loved it. It was so much fun. And while I was attending, I realized how much of a music scene is here in the Twin Cities. Everybody knows Prince, but I didn't realize Dillinger 4 was from here. Husker Du was from here. The Replacements. Going to McNally's when I was like, oh, wow, there's a scene here. And I already love Minnesota. This is my home state. So how can I give back to the scene? So that's kind of how I got into music and how I started finding a love for booking and putting on events. Because we have so many cool resources here in the Twin Cities, like First Avenue and The Current and, now it's shut down, but the Minnesota Music Coalition and those sorts of things. So I wanted to give back to the community because there's such a thriving music scene here already. And so I've been learning as much as I can, just working in this industry for a while. And so while I was attending McNally, a buddy of mine named Matt Hagner, he and I ended up starting a company called All in the Couch. And we were doing like artist management and booking. Matt was handling the management. I was handling the booking. We ended up working with some bands from McNally, started there, and then slowly branched out into other bands and stuff. But man, I learned a lot during that time. I built relationships with First Avenue. I built relationships with The Current and smaller venues around town. At the time, a friend of mine had a studio space above Station 4, rest in peace. It was like a metal venue.
Yeah.
And he had the space that was right above it. And so we used to do DIY, like secret shows all the time, which was cool. And some of the bands that played those DIY shows have gone to do great things. Like Love Sequence was one. Love Sequence is now broken up, but all of the members of that band are still doing great things in the cities right now. Like Bobby Rethwish, he's the front man of the band. He's doing solo DJ stuff and mixed with a full band, which is cool. And he's played like Fine Line and that sort of stuff. And then we worked with Early Eyes. Early Eyes ended up playing one of our DIY shows, which was really cool, man.
And they're signed to Epitaph now, I think?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yep. Gaetano was another band that we worked with at the time. We got their first 7th Street Entry show, which got them on First Avenue's radar, and the rest is history. So I just had a love for just finding bands that have a lot of potential and are good people and getting them in front of audiences and in different venues that they needed to play. And then we eventually brought on another business partner who had like a studio space. So we were kind of turning into a label. And over time, like I realized, okay, I have 2 to 3 jobs and I'm trying to book all these shows. And the bands that we're working with were pretty young at the time. And so financially, it was really difficult and it was taking all of my time. And so I ended up stepping away from the company. I think All in the Couch still exists more as like a recording service today, which is cool.
Studio or live?
I think both, actually. Okay. Shout out to Nick and Walt. Love you guys. Yeah, so they're still doing things. And then I decided to take a break. I wanted to focus on just my own music. Because at that same time, I was also playing in cover bands. So back in high school, I had an original punk band called 156. And I was the booker for that band. And we were all kind of writing together, but Corey, the bassist, was writing a lot of the songs. So we kind of had our own jobs where Corey was the writer. We would all collaborate and come together. And then I would set up shows for us. And we played a lot of shows. That band went through many different members, and we lasted until, I think, 2018, 17, somewhere around there. And then it eventually dissolved. But from that, I learned, okay, here's how you focus on original music and put together shows and small bills and like how you promote those shows. Then on the flip side, I worked with Whiskey Stone, who they're a cover band. They're still gigging. Great guys. And from that, I learned, okay, as a cover band, here's how you put on a really good show. Here's how you work with the venues. Here's how you pertain to the audience because everybody showing up wants to hear their favorite Tom Petty song or their favorite Lynyrd Skynyrd song. And so in that avenue, I learned, okay, make sure, you're playing the songs right, get the people involved and all that. Showmanship is what I learned from that, but also how to work with venues.
Do you find that there's a difference in how you work with venues in a cover band versus an original band?
A little bit, yeah. When you're in an original band, the whole point is to kind of grow your name, get your brand out there, sell t-shirts if you can, and the venue is looking for people who are going to stick around and drink. And so as an original band, it's a little more difficult to get in front of audiences at bigger venues because they want to make sure you can sell your tickets and you're going to bring people for sure. And so as an original band, you tend to start smaller, maybe do house shows and stuff and get a following and then grow. And also trying to get paid as an original band is really hard. You're basically, as an original band, pro tip to everybody listening, you're basically a glorified t-shirt company, just FYI, because that's where you're making your money, man. But as a cover band, everybody knows it's going to be a hit. You just have to sound good, essentially. I've seen cover bands that don't sound great, but everybody's still drooling and bowing down to them because they're playing their favorite songs that they want to hear. So as a cover band, it's a lot easier to get gigs. It's a lot easier to get paid well. It's kind of a guarantee that it's going to go great because as the venue's perspective, they already know that people are going to come and enjoy the music and they're likely going to stay a long time, sing along, and drink a lot. So as a cover band, it's a lot easier to get shows and get paid well versus an original band because of that, unfortunately.
Okay. So Well, let's get back to your timeline. You leave All on the Couch and you take a little break. What happens next?
So at that time, I started playing with Russ Parrish. We were just the Russ Parrish band. Now we're still playing together as Russ Parrish and the Lone Oaks. We were doing a bunch of shows together, kind of building our name, working in different spaces. And then we had our first Nashville show booked, and we were so excited. And that was April of 2020. So the world shut down, and it kind of forced all of us to just kind of like sit back and think and reevaluate what we're trying to do. Because it was so go, 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 say yes to all of the gigs, figure out what the next move is going to be. Actually, not even. We were just like, we'll take all of the gigs that we possibly can. And then when the world shut down, that was a moment for us to like really sit down and think, okay, is this what we want to do? Are we wasting our time? Is it worth going to the venues that we've been playing at? Like, what are we doing as a band? So that pause was actually really cool because at that point I had been done with All on the Couch for about 2.5 years or so. And I still had like a bit of an itch to do what I was doing with All on the Couch, but I just didn't know what I wanted to do. Plus, honestly, man, I kind of felt like a failure. I was like, dude, I worked so hard and like I try to get these bands in front of people and in good venues. And at the time, what I didn't recognize at the time was we were laying the stones to have like a nice path. And I couldn't see the forest through the trees. I was so focused on, oh man, we didn't get that gig that I wanted these bands to get because I know they deserve it. And so it was just disheartening after a while. And so COVID really made me realize like, oh no, I still have a passion for this. I still have a drive. It turns out we were just laying down the stones to make a beautiful walkway. And I was so focused on that walkway being completed so quickly that I just didn't realize how much work we were actually putting in, and we were soon going to reap the benefits, you know? And then I started seeing those bands do great. Like Gaetano has since sold out the Main Room a couple times, which is amazing. Some of the other bands that we worked with at the time have like moved to different states and they're doing great. So I realized, oh yeah, we were putting in the work, and it just takes a long time sometimes to get to that next level.
Most times. Yeah.
At least a decade. You know, I feel like that's kind of the rule of thumb. After about 7 to 10 years is when you really start seeing all the work that you put in start paying off. So yeah, COVID happened, and I recognized that I still had the passion and the drive to do what I was doing with All on the Couch, and I wanted to get back into the scene. And so I started thinking about, okay, what worked and what didn't work with what I was doing in particular with All on the Couch. And I think as far as the booking goes, okay, additionally, I also have worked at the Caboose, and I've done shows at 7th Street Entry. So I was like, okay, I know what the venues want from original bands. I know what these venues want from cover bands. I know what the bands want as both an original and a cover band. Basically, people hanging out and enjoying your music. A venue wants people sticking around and consuming, you know, whether it be food or beverages or whatever. Just be there and have a good time. So I figured, okay, I could take all these different aspects that I've experienced from being on both sides, the venue side and the band side, and tried to figure out how, you know, I can offer the best possible experience and kind of be that middleman for both, you know?
Yeah. So at that point, is that essentially when you decide to crank up Coffee Break?
Yep. Yeah, exactly. So it was 2022. I started scheming, coming up with like the business plan and all that jazz and what I wanted to do. When I went to go register with the state, I found out I needed a logo. So I had a friend of mine, Emily White, shout out, over in the UK. She designed the original logo, which was a cute like coffee cup with like the steam coming out the top. I had everything that I needed. I registered with the state, and then I started scheming. Okay, how should I begin this? My plan was 1 to 2 events a month, right? And that was the goal. So as of September, that's when I officially launched my first 2 shows. The first one was at Bryant Lake Bowl, and then the second one was at Third Space Cafe in Uptown. For both of those shows, it was kind of like, I'm going to take some of my favorite local bands, put them together, and, you know, just see what happens. And they both went really well. And I was like, okay, this is fun. I should do more. So again, the plan was 1 to 2 events a month. The company blew up, man. As soon as I did the Third Space event, the people at Third Space approached me and they were like, hey, like we have a liquor license, but we close at 3. Not a lot of people are consuming alcohol before 3 o'clock. So would you be interested in putting together a music series to kind of help us promote the alcohol sales and just get people vibing and hanging out longer in the cafe? I said, absolutely. That turned into an every Thursday from November until the end of February. That just ended now. And then once I got that weekly series going on, my friend Jason over at Lakes and Legends was like, hey man, like we want to do original music on Fridays. Can you fill 2 hours of original music? And I was like, challenge accepted. Yes, of course I can. And so then the last one was I went to Roke over in St. Paul, and I just asked for one show in December. We got that set up and it was great. And then it was a week after I set up that show, they hit me up and they were like, this is Travis and Adam, the owners of Roke. They were like, hey man, do you want to put together a show around Thanksgiving? And I was like, sure, why not? And then a week later, they were like, hey man, so we want to open up another day of the week. We're thinking Tuesdays. Would you be interested in booking like a showcase every Tuesday? And I said, heck yeah. So literally within my first month and a half of business, I had 3 weekly series, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. What that did is that forced me to scheme through all of the bands in the Twin Cities, find who has a good following, who is cool and nice and easy to vibe with, who has enough original material to cover an hour or two.
Mm-hmm.
Like I just built this quick roster of like all these great bands and got to network with all of them. And as you speak with one band, they tell me about another band.
Yep.
And it's a huge web. It's crazy. So literally within my first couple of months of business, I already had a list of like 100 bands I could just call upon. And
Sure.
then that also led to like venues reaching out and being like, hey man, the opening band dropped off, or we need an opening band for this show.
Yeah, now
Do you
you're
know
a
of anyone?
resource of being
Yep.
a connection to other artists. Yeah.
Exactly.
Cool. Well, let's just recap a little bit of this quick and then break down exactly what Coffee Break is doing now.
Sure.
So you start like everybody, playing in bands, learning instruments, that sort of thing, attend McNally, make more connections, meet more bands. One of your first sort of business endeavors is on the couch with some friends.
Yep.
You start picking up and using the skills that you learned at McNally, but you start doing things like booking shows for other people, dabbling in artist management, and I'm sure a couple other label type services, as you mentioned. But on the same hand, it's a ton of work, little money, oftentimes, especially with those kind of startups. So you exit that, but then go back to playing, being an artist. But you're also working in clubs at that time. You're working at venues. You're working at breweries. You're working where there's live music. So you start to understand the other side of the coin, that it's not just about, hey, let's have a band in here. The venue also has to make some money and there needs to be people there. So you start to understand what they're looking for, what the space is looking for, and what success means to them. COVID happens. You get some time to reflect. And you realize that you might be a good middleman for the artists and all this stuff, and Coffee Break Entertainment is born. All right, so we're up to date. We've got Coffee Break. You launched that. It's clear there's immediately demand for it. You've got the cafe in Uptown. You've got Lakes and Legends and Roke. And
Yep.
what was there was another one, right?
Those are the main showcases,
Okay.
weekly series.
Okay,
yeah.
yeah. And, start coordinating all of this. All right, so dive in kind of to the specifics of what your company does, because
Sure.
obviously you're booking shows and you're helping connect artists with show opportunities, but you're also helping these businesses fill up their spaces and sell more stuff, right? So when you put together events, what does that look like? What are people asking for specifically? And how does that vary from place to place?
Okay. So this is where my expertise comes into play, because it is never a straight answer. Every venue and every band is a different story. So I'm going to take Third Space into consideration first.
First, just talk to people about where Third Space is, what it is. So if people have never been there, they can be familiar with what you're talking about.
Oh, you should check it out. So Third Space Cafe is in Uptown Minneapolis. It's an adorable little cafe. They have a very large space. Erin is the owner. She has basically an all-female staff. Like, it is just a great spot to go and have a cup of coffee, go for a first date.
How many people can they hold for a show?
I think about 100, maybe a little under.
Oh, that's pretty big.
Yeah, it is pretty big. They got tables and stuff and not a whole lot of space to store the tables. So I'd say probably comfortably 80 people. So them in particular, man, like they didn't have a budget for the music. They just knew that they wanted to do a series. So what we agreed upon was like a suggested donation of $5. So it's like we sort of set a cover, but we're not going to like ream you if you don't pay it. It's kind of more just like, come enjoy the space, grab a cup of coffee, grab a beer, have a sandwich, and enjoy the music. You know,
Okay.
It could be background music. And if you want it to be background, go sit in the back of the cafe. If you want to be more in the forefront and enjoy the music that's happening, then sit closer to the stage area. You know?
Got it.
Yeah. So with that one in particular, it's like, okay, so now I have to find bands that can fill 2 hours of time that are basically playing for free. So what immediately happened in my head was, okay, I'm not going to be able to get Gaetano for this show. Like, definitely not, you know? So who else can I have? So that started making me branch into smaller artists that have been doing open mics that are able to fill an hour, maybe 2 hours. So I would reach out to these bands and just say, hey, here's the spot, here's the date. Are you interested? If you bring all your friends and tell them about the suggested donation, you know, there's potential to make some good money on it. You're going to get a free sandwich out of it. Basically, just come and showcase your music, get some practice, and come hang out. So that was great, and that's what happened. And then I think about the situation with Lakes and Legends. They had a budget of like $200.
And they're a brewery?
They are. They have now passed, unfortunately. They closed right at the end of 2023.
Okay.
But when we were doing that, they had a budget of $200 per night. So, and they wanted original music only. And the reason being is because ASCAP and BMI are a thing. Those guys are really good at hunting down anybody and everybody who offers live music. So you have to be really careful. If you're a venue and you don't have your ASCAP or BMI licensing, make sure you get on that, because you could be a cafe that fits 30 people and they will find you. Yeah, I worked at a cafe once that fit about 45 people, and I got calls from them twice a year. And yeah, they'll find you. Anyway, so they wanted original music only because they didn't have those licensing. It was mostly just like silent in the tap room anyway. So I had to find original acts that could fill 1 to 2 hours. If they could only do about an hour, maybe 45 minutes, then I would book them for the first half, and then I'd find somebody else who could fill the second half.
Mm-hmm.
So if it was a band that could fill the full 2 hours, they got the $200. If it was a band that could only do one, then they got $100. And I would be there physically with my sound system to make sure I was basically running the show and inviting people in and all that jazz. So that's different from Third Space, because Third Space, they have those licenses. So you could come in and play covers, which is a lot easier to fill time.
Sure.
If you can play covers.
Sure.
If you're an original band, it's a little trickier. Not everybody has even 20 minutes of original material. So that was a real challenge, because I had a short amount of time to find all original acts. Again, I went through probably 150 emails, dude.
Well, yeah, because obviously you have to have enough material, but additionally you have to be okay with the conditions of the show, the pay, and so on, that where you're going to find some bands that can fill it, but it might be too low paying for them.
And what's funny is when I was doing it, because they wanted mostly solo, duo, maybe trio. And what's funny is as I was doing it, as a musician myself, my goal is to make $100 per hour as a musician. So as I was reaching out, I was like, guys, I'm so sorry. It's only $100 for an hour, $200 if you could fill the 2 hours. The amount of people that reached out to me and they were like, $200 for original music? Sign me up, dude. I'm like, okay, cool, right on. So that just opened up my mind to other aspects too, and realizing that, okay, maybe not everybody has had the same opportunities I have. And so I personally would be a little pickier about those shows. But these people wanted the chance to come and play.
Everybody's at a different stage. When you're
Exactly.
getting started out, lower pay is often one of the conditions that you accept to, to cut your teeth, to get good at it, to have an opportunity to play on stage in front of people. But as you've developed that and you have experience, then naturally, yeah, you should be more picky about the gigs you take. We're going to get into that actually in a little bit. But how much influence do you have over like what the event is going to be? Do you ever combine events with other things like trivia or things that you see in those kind of spaces? Or are you live music only and then it's just a matter of negotiating like what the budget is and what the vibe is going to be like?
Yeah, as of right now, I haven't really done anything in addition other than the first event that I did at Third Space that eventually led into the series was, I called it Mochas at Midnight. And I wanted it to be just a community night for everybody to get together, whether they lived in Uptown, Minnesota or not. Basically, just come together and hang out. So I had Johnny Osland played, and then Emma Jean played. So we had about a little over 2 hours of music. And then we had some of the baristas did like vintage markets. And so they had their own like vintage markets in the back. And then, oh my gosh, I should have looked them up. There's a gentleman who does he does art at Third Space Cafe. He has a studio space in the basement, And so he puts his art up on the walls, and it's super great. It's available for sale. So I was like, dude, you're already here doing things. Would you do a live painting during the event, and then we can put it up for sale? Or, if the price doesn't match what you want, then you can at least have a new piece to go up on the wall, and then your name is out there and people get to physically watch you put this piece together.
Sure.
So that was really cool. Since then, I haven't really done too many other things like that. I'm definitely open to it, though. So to answer your question, I guess every show has been different. In the case of Rogue on Tuesday nights, they're like, just get us good music in here, man. They do a lot of like heavier shows and EDM shows. So I'm the one bringing the singer-songwriters to the Rogue Music Lounge. I have more say on that, thanks to them. They've given me a lot of flexibility to kind of do what I believe in and get who I want. Yeah, I guess every venue's different. When it comes to fulfilling these showcases, it's more me making the venue happy. What do they want? And then I supply. When it comes to just a straight up coffee break event, then I have all of the say. My first big coffee break event happened a couple weeks ago. My wife and I play as an acoustic duo called Beyond the Trees. So we played with Sammy Jean Cohen, and she put together an all-female band. And I called it my biggest coffee break show because it was the first time the company rented out a space. We rented out the Grand Event Center down in Northfield. And since all of my money was on the line to make that show happen, you're darn right I wanted it to be what I wanted it to be, which was just like good vibes, kind of a country folk sort of night. And I know that Northfield has like a bit of a built-in following. Like, even if they don't know you, they're going to show up and check out the show. So I put a lot of emphasis on hoping that that was going to be the case. And then additionally, of course, I boosted the promotions on socials, and I went down and physically put up posters for an entire day. I went to St. Olaf. I went to Carleton College and walked around the campus. And that was a cool part too. The venue actually allowed us to do 2 ticket tiers. So we had a student discount, which was cool. And I wanted that to be the case because a lot of times these college students want to go check something out, but they can't afford it, So my whole thing was like, it's $10 straight for like a college student. And then everybody else who can't afford it, that wants to come check it out, can't afford it and will come check it out. So we offered that lower price for the college kids, and it worked, man. We had about 12 or 13 St. Olaf students walked in, and I was doing everything. I ran the sound, I played it, I ran the door. And as people were coming in, I was like, hey, how'd you hear about this? And all of the St. Olaf kids were like, we saw the posters on campus. We're like, this looks fun. And the poster design was great. Shout out to Emma Jean also for that poster design. But yeah, it worked out really great. So yeah, every show is different. When it's a coffee break curated show, though, I have all of the control to turn it into whatever I want. Some venues are picky and they don't want vintage markets there, or they don't want live painting. And I get that. You got to watch out for the stage and whatever, or the floors. They don't want paint all over the floors.
Yeah.
But I love that aspect of, bringing the community together and offering other things in addition to the live music.
Yeah. And, when we were talking, when we first met, one of the things that I liked and I thought really aligned with what I'm also trying to do with the podcast is that you had said that you wanted coffee break entertainment events, whether they're hosted by you or just facilitated with another venue hosting or whatever, to be a place where people can go to connect, where community can come together. And that's a big reason why I wanted to have you on today, is to talk about this as a resource so that if you're a singer-songwriter, you're a solo artist, or if you're in a band, you've been struggling to find shows or knowing where to start, reach out to Alec and see if he can get you on a bill, or at the very least, connect with him so that you can go to some of these events, show up on one of those Tuesday nights or, Thursday nights, talk with the other people that are there and introduce yourself, because these are the kind of resources in our city where you can really start to build your network. And you can go from knowing no one to knowing quite a few people really, really quickly. So I just want to encourage people to do that if you're just getting started, and or if you're just looking to expand the network that you already have.
I'll piggyback off that and say that is 100% true. I did a little coffee break appreciation party at Third Space Cafe. It was the second to last Thursday that we were there. And I didn't have a band booked. It was January and I'm looking ahead and I'm like, okay, I don't have a band booked for that night. I can either stress out and try to find someone, or I could just turn it into a little party. I did. I made it an open mic sort of situation. And I had people show up who have been following me on social media, but I've never met. They've sent me DMs or they've commented on my stuff, but I've never met them in person. Some of those people showed up. They played on the showcase, or not the showcase, I'm sorry, the open mic, and it turned into a gig. at the showcase. Just the other day, I had Dan Angsberg? Sorry, bro. I'm botching it. But he showed up and did the open mic. And I was like, dude, you've been commenting on my stuff. I've never met you. It's a pleasure to meet you right now. You sounded great. I need another band. I need one more guy on the bill for this show at the Roke on a Tuesday. You available? He's like, dude, yes. And it was great. He brought like 10 people and it was a nice little jam and nice little party. And yeah, I guess you just never know. Come out and network. Come see a coffee break event. I get a lot of people putting in submissions on my website, and I get a lot of people reaching out via social media. And I feel bad because I can't always reply to all of those inquiries because there's a lot, but keep bugging me. I will get back to you. And if I don't get back to you via messages, just show up to one of my shows and let's chat. You're on my radar. I guarantee it. It's just a matter of whether or not I can fulfill what you're looking for at this time.
Yeah, well, okay, let's talk about that. You've submitted a message, you've showed up, you've made the connection. You put on a variety of events, so there's going to be different answers to this. But talk a little bit about who you're looking for.
Sure.
And who you're not looking for. You know what I mean? Like, what makes a good fit? Who are the people you can help? And who are the people who are like, that's not something I do, you know?
That's a great question. Okay, so the easy answer to that is I don't really do metal and I don't really do hip hop because I've just never been in that scene. I also don't really do jazz very well because I might know a couple venues that I could probably put you in, but I'm just not as versed in that world as most people are. But I also know a lot of people who are in those worlds. So if I might not be able to help you out, I can at least send you in the right direction with someone who I believe in, that I know will treat you right and probably get you something. I'm more focused on the singer-songwriter, rock sort of stuff because that's what I've been doing for so long. As I mentioned earlier, I was in a punk band called 156, so I'm versed in that scene, but I haven't done it in so long. Rest in peace, Triple Rock. That was like the spot I used to put on shows at all the time. The Caboose isn't really doing a whole lot of things anymore, but that was another spot I would play in. And there's a lot of DIY house shows happening. And I've actually reached out, I'm not going to name any, but I've reached out to quite a few on social media, and literally all of them are either shutting down or taking a break this summer of 2024. So the punk DIY sort of thing, I can't help too much as far as placing you, but I'm down to work with you because I want to get back into that scene. That'd be great. Singer-songwriter, I've been doing folk Americana stuff for so long, so I know a lot of cafes and I know a lot of smaller venues that are looking for that vibe, so I can put you in one of those places. Cover bands, same thing. Like, when I was in the cover band, we had a booking agent for a while, and this is another thing that I try to bring to the table that's a little bit different. I want to work with you directly to figure out what your goals are, because when I was in the cover band, our agent would send us 3 to 5 hours out of town to play for a really good paycheck, and that's cool. But then it's like, okay, now we're just gone for so long, and we're not going to drive 5 hours or 10 hours round trip just for one little show. So why don't we set up another show around that time, you know? And it was cool, but it became a drag after a while. And so I want to be able to sit down and be like, okay, what do you want? What are your goals out of this?
Yeah, and that's a great segue into, I think, the next thing we should talk about, which is, so you've kind of said, hey, if you're a singer-songwriter, if you're Americana, alt country, rock, that sort of thing, that's the kind of events you're currently connected with. That's what you're most likely going to be able to help with. But there's different ways that you help. There are pre-existing events where you're essentially filling slots. You know, somebody might reach out and then they're just going to be on your radar, on the roster of like, hey, I have an opening. Would you like it? You know?
Yes.
And then there's more of the direct one-on-one management of people where you might get to know that band better, do more customized booking for them, take a little bit more of a management role. Obviously, you're only going to do that with a few. You can't do that with everybody. Because I know you offer both those things. So I want you to talk about that a little bit.
Totally. So if you look at my website, I have a list of artists that I'm working with. That is an agreement between Coffee Break Entertainment and those bands to keep their calendar full or busy. And everybody's different. Like Eli Gardner, I'm working with him right now, and he's looking to play as often as he can, but he has his own limitations. He doesn't want to go super far out of town unless, of course, it's a mini tour. Like, if I'm going to send him to Milwaukee, I'm going to get him a Thursday, Friday, Saturday on the way there and back, you know, make it make sense. There are some people who are just, that I'm working with, that are just like, I just want to play twice a month or every weekend, you know? And the deal that I'm doing with all of these bands is non-exclusive. So if a venue reaches out to you and you don't want me to take a booking fee, set it up. That's all you, man, because I'm just trying to help you get out there. But if you want me to kind of handle it, then you can pass them my way and I'll work with the venue and whatnot. But yeah, every band is different. So I like to sit down and work with you and figure out what is it that you are looking for. What are your goals? For example, in 2022, I personally wanted to play 100 shows, right? And I did. I made it to 96 because I got COVID. So I missed 3 shows in one weekend. And then another one canceled on us. But what was nice was I still had a roster of some artists and friends that I was connected with. And I was like, yo, I can't do this show. Can you hop on it? And they took it over. So I was still able to supply music to the venues. I wasn't leaving them totally high and dry, and they were dark for the night. But as I set that goal, I didn't realize how much more thought I should have put into that. So I played my damn near 100 shows, right? But I showed up to these venues and I was like, oh, this is not the vibe. These people, I'm going to be background music, or this is just a paid practice or whatever. And so what I learned was like, it was amazing to play 100 shows. I think what it actually did was gave me a bit of legitimacy to friends and family, because they were like, dang, dude, like you're playing a lot of shows. You must be like really busy and like doing really well. And it's like, sure, but I didn't think about what I needed to do with these shows. So yes, I played about 100 shows, but some of the venues were not a good fit. And some of the venues were a great fit, but they didn't pay well. And so as I went through all these shows, I reflected at the end of the year and I was like, okay, what places didn't pay well, but I got 15 follows on Instagram. And I know for a fact that these people said, if I ever come back to this city or this venue again, they're going to bring their homies. And so if I go back to that space, I should probably have merch, because I think those guys are going to buy it. And then there were some venues I played where it was like, okay, this is paid practice. It was a paycheck. You know, I wanted more out of it. I had bigger expectations. And then I showed up and realized what the room was. And so that's something I'm trying to encourage all the bands that I'm working with, is like, think about those details when you're setting up shows, because everybody wants to play First Avenue. But guess what? You're not going to play First Avenue unless you can prove you can sell tickets and you can prove that you can bring people out no matter what day of the week it is, right? And once you do that, then you're on their good side and they're going to be hitting you up for more things. But if you do that and you botch it, you better be good and ready for that next time you're there, you know? Because First Avenue runs a lot of different venues around all of Minnesota and even beyond. They're basically a gigantic promoter. They're not just like one venue. So you need to keep that in mind. Like if you're playing at any of the First Avenue venues, you better be good and ready. Because if you aren't, and the show goes bad, there goes the Turf Club, there goes 7th Street, there goes like so many different venue options for you. So you need to be thinking about that too. Like, yeah, there might be, you know, a cool little venue in Hudson, Wisconsin. And you're just like, yeah, it's 35 minutes away. I'll go play, you know, for $100 or whatever. But if you're not thinking of these things that the venue wants,
yes,
you might not come back.
Yes, there's the repercussions of just being prepared for a show. When it comes to thinking about what kind of show you want to get, there's multiple factors in. First and foremost, it's where are you at in your developmental journey? Is this your first show? Like, that's a different type of show than, no, we've been playing for years and we can sell out a place, right?
Yep.
Different ends of the spectrum. So you have to be realistic about what you're asking for and what you're ready for and what your draw is going to be and all that kind of thing. Because as you've said every single time, it matters how many people you can bring. Yep. It matters. It's not just about the music. Live shows exist because people go to them. If no one goes to them, no one cares. So you have to consider your circumstances. Okay, well, that's a part of it. But then the other part is, because maybe let's say you have a little draw throughout the Twin Cities and now you have a lot of choices. You can play a lot of different clubs, but it doesn't mean you should.
Yes.
There is such a thing as playing too many, as you did with 100 shows. You realized that there's diminishing returns very quickly if you overplay the same place. So you have to ask what your goals are. If you're just starting out, you might have the situation where it's like, we just need to learn how to get good live. And that's where some gigs can be what you termed as practice gigs, you know?
Yes.
Because maybe you are just sort of background noise. You're playing at a brewery where there's already people are having fun drinking and they just want music in the background. They're not worried so much about your draw. That can be a really great gig if you don't have good draw, but you can play well. But, people may not really pay attention to you. That's the trade-off.
And you have to be okay with that too.
And you have to be okay with that. Then there's listening rooms, and there's rooms that are only going to have people in there if you bring them. So if you don't have a draw, you don't want to play those rooms. There's different things. Then there's the other economic side of it of, well, if we're going to travel to a gig, we have gas money. We might have to take some time off of work, things like that. If that gig only pays $100, only pays $50, only pays a sandwich, whatever it might be, it may not be worth playing. In the early days, a lot of people just say yes to everything because it's fun, you're getting experience. And in general, it's usually a good idea to get as much experience as you can. Part of learning what works, what doesn't work, how to figure out what gigs are for you and not for you is just doing it, saying yes. But the mistake I've seen a lot of local bands make is they stay in that mindset with that philosophy for too long.
Yep.
And what happens is you just get burned out. You start showing up and going through these motions, and it is a lot of work. So when the magic of it wears off a little bit and you leave with way too small of a check for the amount of time that you had to put into that, it really can grind you down quickly, and it can grind a band down quickly. And so it's really important to think about these things, not only for the sake of the venue, for the sake of your relationships, but for the sake of your own mental health.
Yes, sir.
So that you are getting rewarded properly, adequately for what you're putting into it.
Yes, that's so true. Again, I can only speak on my own experiences, but that was something that Russ Parrish and the Lone Oaks went through for a while. Huge shout out. I have to give a huge shout out to Mike's Tav and Roundhouse Brewery. Mike's Tav is a venue in St. Paul. It's a weird room, man. Like, it's the type of room where you get the mix of all of the college kids from like St. Kate's, St. Thomas, and all that right around the corner in Concordia. But then you'll also have like the 50-plus-year-olds that just live in the neighborhood and have been there forever that just want to come in and have their Miller High Life. And it's like, okay, that room in particular, it paid decently for what it was or what it is, but we were a trio. So we were essentially walking out like $100 per guy for a 3-hour night, sometimes longer because of encores or whatever. But we had to supply the sound. And so we had to lug our system in, and we'd get there an hour and a half early and set that up and do our sound check. And then we'd play the 3 hours, and then we'd tear it down, and then we'd network and we'd talk with people. So this was like a 7-hour event,
Mm-hmm.
And like, some people will look at that and be like, and literally we would play. Some nights it was packed. It was like Cowboy Jack's downtown, dude. It was just like shoulder to shoulder, spilled beverages everywhere and crazy. And then there were times we'd show up and it was like, we're playing for 10 of our neighbors right now. Like there's not a whole lot of people here. It was easy to look at the money and the amount that we were making and the amount of work that we had to put in to make the show even happen. And then easy also to look at those rooms where it was a dud, and it's easy to look at all of those factors and be like, man, why? What are we doing? But we all knew as a band that it was worth playing that room because it grew our fan base incredibly. That was one of those rooms where it's like, yeah, it's worth taking the pay cut and it's worth lugging in all this gear because we've sold merch every time we've played, and we at least have somebody coming in and they'll message us. They'll be like, dude, I wanted to come out. I was going to bring friends. Something came up in the family. I can't make it or whatever. They would actually reach out to us and give us an excuse to not show up. And we saw that. We're like, there's something happening here. This isn't like one of those rooms where you play it once and then you're like, oh, we'll be back in a month. And then people say, oh yeah, we'll see you. And then they don't show up. They were actually reaching out to us and letting us know why they couldn't come. And so we were like, okay, obviously like we have a real following here. We need to keep doing this. And so we did. And it was the same thing with Roundhouse Brewery. Every time we went up to play at Roundhouse, the staff was great. The people were amazing. It's a long drive up to Nisswa.
That's what I was going to ask. Where's Roundhouse?
Yeah, Roundhouse Brewery's in Nisswa, the Brainerd, Gull Lake area.
Yeah.
We would get a weekend full gigs at Madden's Resort up there. And Russ would usually do it solo or maybe, with a drummer or whatever. But he asked me to come one year, and it's a resort, so you don't really go off. But I was like, let's go hit the town. We ended up going to Roundhouse Brewery, talked with the manager at the time, Molly, and she was like, you guys are playing Madden's? Like, we should probably give you a shot, especially if you're driving all the way up here. So we would do Friday night Saturday afternoon by the pool, Saturday night, and then Sunday over at Roundhouse. So like 4 shows, 3 days, which was nuts. And it was a total of like 12 hours of music, you know, in the course of 3 days, which is a lot of work, dude. But anyway, point is, it was one of those spots where we played it once and we were like, okay, this was cool. And then we played it again and again and again. And over time we realized, oh yeah, like sometimes it's a full house and sometimes it's not. But what's happening is, again, just like Mike's Tav, these people are reaching out and they're asking when we're going to return. And they're actually inquiring what the band is doing. And they're following us on socials and they're commenting and they're following along. And we were like, we need to keep playing this room because we're actually building a following. And then just February 1st, it was a Thursday night. We played 7th Street Entry and we sold it out, dude. And we had Mike's Tav ended up closing that night. And the entire staff came out and some of the regulars came out. And it's like, okay, that was absolutely worth that investment. Like in the exchange of not making what we wanted financially on a show, it turned into a sold out show and diehard fans that are still coming to our shows now, even though we haven't played Mike's Tav in like 6, 7, 8 months. Like it's been a while. So it's cool, man. So those are the things you need to think about. Try every room once and then afterwards think about it and think, okay, you know, is it worth coming back to this room for reason A, it's going to pay well and you get to work on new songs and try working on your craft still, you know? Or B, is it going to build more of a following? Or C, whatever your reason is, man.
Yeah.
If it doesn't make sense for you, do it. If not, try it once, learn from that experience and move on. But those are things that I think a lot of bands overlook. They don't think about these sort of things. They just go, I want to play a show.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, cool. But let's make sure you're doing it right.
And that's okay in the beginning, you know, and I think that, you know, if that's where you're at, great. Get experience, get better at being on stage and playing live. But at some point, make a very conscious transition to being pickier so that you don't overplay your crowd and you're not burning yourself out. Mm-hmm. Playing shows is a lot of work. And so, you know, just be smart about it. And if you have a band, make sure everybody else is on that same page too and feels like, yes, my time is worth the amount of money this is paying. Because if that gets off, things get rocky with that band quick. So
as you go on, you might be best buddies and that's why you started the band. But
I want to talk about 2 more things that I have in my notes here when it comes to putting together shows from a band's perspective and also for Coffee Break. But okay, let's say you got an event coming up, right? Maybe it's one of your regular series. Maybe it's a one-off event. Maybe it's something new. But a band connects with you. It's coming up. What is expected for promoting that show? What is your role in it as the company? And what's the band's role?
For sure. I watched the episode you had with Tanner from the Green Room. And I totally agree with him, man. Like, if you're not posting about the show at all, I'm probably not going to work with you again, man, because I can tell that's going to be a dud. From my end of putting the show together, once I have the lineup and I know what the vibe of the night is going to be, I go out to all the open mics and I try to perform as well at the open mics. But if I'm not performing, I'm at least going out and I'm like, hey, man, we have this really cool Americana night going on, you know, over at Roke next Tuesday. You should swing through and check it out. I heard you play and you kind of do folky Americana stuff. I think you'll dig these guys that are playing. Here's who's playing. Here's the Facebook event, whatever. So I'm physically going out and telling people about it. I will take into consideration whether or not I think a show is worth printing posters out for, because that's a lot of money and also, again, a lot of time. If it's a bigger show that I want to be extremely successful and I want people there, I will take like $100, $200. I'll print out posters. I'll go out. I'll put those flyers out in markets that I think are worth it. Like I'll hit a lot of record shops or, you know, if the show's in Uptown, I'm going to put all of the posters around Uptown and then I'll hit some of the cool spots like Electric Fetus or whatever, where people are probably going to be hanging out in. So physical posters, if it makes sense, I'll take a social boost. I'll put like $20 or $30, sometimes more, on Meta and pay for like the Instagram ads and the Facebook ads. And then I think about all these things depending on like the size of the bands that are playing, you know, like I booked Ava Levy and Emma Jean and oh my goodness, I had one other artist on that bill. It was a Tuesday night at Roke. Like Ava Levy has like a following, you know, the Levies have been around the Twin Cities forever. So I knew that she was going to have some pull. And then Emma Jean, she's opened up for like Trampled by Turtles and Charlie Parr, and she has them on speed dial. So like she has rapport already. So I was like, okay, this show, just by having their names on it, we're probably going to have a good pull. So I put less effort into social boosts and posters and put more of an effort of going to open mics and being like, and just talking to people around town. I'm grabbing a cup of coffee at the cafe. And I'm like, the music you're playing right now kind of fits the vibe of the show I have coming up. What are you guys doing on Tuesday? You should come check it out. So a lot of word of mouth. I feel like that goes a lot further than an Instagram message too, you know? So that's kind of what I'm doing. So take it into consideration. Is it worth putting money into this? Do I think I'm going to get a return to be able to put a couple $100s into posters, boosts, and promo? And then from the band's perspective, I expect them to post about it and talk about it at their other shows. If they're doing an open mic, take 2 seconds before you play your song or after, be like, hey, I'm Alec. I'm playing at, Roke next Tuesday. Come check it out. Also on the bill is so-and-so. The band should post about it. I think they should post about it once or twice. Maybe once it's announced, and then again as you're approaching it, and then throw it in your story, Just get the word out. Send your messages, send a text, make a phone call, try to get people out. If you care about it, you'll find people to show up, And I know some days are hard. Like, a lot of people make excuses right away. Like, Tuesday night, man, I don't know if I can get people out at 9 p.m. on a Tuesday. Well, did you try? Give it a shot. Just call your mom. Be like, Mom, I'll buy you a martini if you come out and hang out, And same thing for the venues too. Like, I expect the venues to post about it like twice if they can, It doesn't have to be a big deal, but just a friendly reminder, That's what I do, and that's my advice. Please just promote it in person at your events and post online.
The other question I had for you is the negotiation process.
Mm-hmm.
What does that look like for you? What does it look like for the bands in terms of just the money side of things?
Yeah, man. So every room is different. In the case of the Third Space and Roke showcases, they did not have a budget and do not have a budget. So I am splitting the door with the bands. We're doing like an equal split 4 ways, essentially. So like if I have 3 bands, and the coffee break would be the 4th member that we're splitting the money with. But then in the case of the bands that I'm booking for, I'm just taking a percentage. So like some of the bands that I worked with early on, we agreed just 10%. And I was like, you're helping me, I'm helping you. Like, I'm getting my name out there, so I'm taking 10%. For some of the newer acts that I'm working with, I'm taking 15% because they have more of a name. They have more going on. And so it's like, okay, I got to put a lot of work into like getting you out there because of all the requirements that you have. So that's my negotiation with the bands that I'm working with. And same thing with the venues too. I'll ask them if they want a showcase. I'll ask if they have a budget. If so, how do I work with that budget and make the most sense for me to do it and for the bands to do it? When I'm setting up a show with a venue, every venue's different. Like, I think Tanner at the Green Room was saying that they take 30%. They do like a 70-30 split or somewhere around there.
I don't think he mentioned it to me. That might be the case, but I can't confirm or deny.
Okay, well, I can't confirm or deny either, but I think that's what he talked about. Something like that. First Avenue, pre-COVID, used to do 70-30. Post-COVID, now they're doing 60-40. So the bands get 60%, they take 40%. But the exchange is they don't take any cut of the merch, which a lot of venues are doing right now. And that's something sometimes you have to negotiate. I haven't personally had to yet, but when that time comes and somebody like a bar wants to take a percentage of merch from the bands, then I will argue on your behalf to get a percentage of the bar sales during your show. Because why would you be dipping into stuff that I'm paying for and providing if I don't get anything out of yours either? And most venues probably won't do that. So then in that case, I would fight for a better deal with the door.
Yeah. Generally merch sales is going to be larger venues, not really what we're covering today, but
that's fair. Although there was, I don't remember what venue it was. It doesn't matter. I did run into that recently though, where I was like, oh, okay. Like they wanted to take 10% of merch sales. And I was like, these bands don't have merch. Sorry, man. Like let's not even talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting if it's trickling down into smaller spaces, but
yeah. The Bryant Lake Bowl. I love Bryant Lake Bowl because they're small. They take 50% of the door. So I'm okay with doing that for now and proving to them the quality of artists and shows that I'm bringing in. We haven't had a sellout there yet. They only have 80 seats. So as soon as we hit a sellout, that's when I'm going to be like, okay, let's renegotiate. I'm bringing quality artists. That I'm filling up the room. And that they're going to eat. If we were to promote a dinner special or a beer special, would you be willing to take less of the door in order to make the show happen? And again, just being flexible and working with people and understanding where they're coming from. Like Bryant Lake Bowl, they don't do a whole lot of shows. And, late nights, they probably do more bar sales than they do food. So I'm sure they're looking at their overhead and they're like, we have to take 50%. That's totally understandable. Until I build that relationship with them and it's really tight, I'm not really looking to renegotiate that because that's just the deal they do, and I respect that.
To some extent, you have to get your foot in the door first, right?
Yes.
And then if you've got some leverage meaning you've proven that you can bring something valuable because you can bring a crowd that consumes food and drinks beverages. Then you have leverage, and renegotiating is perfectly fine. Don't be afraid to do that. I have talked to a lot of bands that are playing bigger and bigger shows that don't negotiate much at all. They just assume that the first price that's thrown out is the last price. It's not always true. It might be, but unless you're willing to ask, you'll never know. So don't be afraid to renegotiate, but be reasonable with, what size the venue is. Is this an all-out music venue, or is this a cafe that's just trying to bring in some extra people? Those budgets are going to be wildly different. Like you said, with Third Space, they don't even have a budget for music. So you can't expect to get paid a lot there. Those are the kind of gigs that you're playing to get your own craft up, to maybe make a few connections, to do some networking and stuff, but it's not going to be a money gig, generally speaking. So just smart to think about what it is up front. What leverage do you have? If you don't have any, then,
be willing to take whatever they have to give.
You got to start somewhere. Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. And don't be afraid to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that's great. That's a great spot to showcase whatever songs you're working on, new songs, old songs, try a new cover song, It
all goes back to, what do you need out of the show?
Yep.
If you need practice, you just need time on stage, then you can take certain shows for that. If you need it to start paying serious money, then it's time to start saying no to certain shows and making some demand up for a bigger show and finding a space that does pay well for your crowd to turn out.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Did we miss anything that you wanted to cover in terms of Coffee Break? Like if somebody wants to reach out to you and connect, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, you can hit me up on Instagram. You can send me a DM, Instagram, Facebook, or I have a spot on my website, coffeebreakentertainment.com. There's a form you can fill out. It's just basically like, what are you looking for? And I get that directly into my pocket, which is nice, so I can read through it. I get a lot of inquiries coming through all the time. So like I said at the beginning of the podcast, it's like sometimes it's difficult to keep up with the amount of inquiries that are coming through. But don't be afraid to reach back out. I will follow up with you at some point. And some of that might be just because like literally in one day, I might be so focused on just 3 bands. And all I can do is like send inquiries for 3 of the bands I'm working with. And that's a full 8 to 10 hour day. And then the next day I got to pick my next artist and work on that. And then by the end of the week, I'm spending my time following up with all these venues I've contacted over the week. And so because I'm still new and because I grew so fast, I'm still learning what my workflow is and what makes the most sense. But I'm always taking notes and keeping track of these things too. So like if I get an inquiry from you and you're interested in putting together a show and you just want to know, you have a couple questions, maybe put that at the beginning of the message. It's just like, I have a question about putting together a show, or I have a question about how you would approach this. I'll get back to you quicker about that versus if you hit me up and you're like, yo, I want to put together a show. It's currently the beginning of March and I want my show to happen. I'm doing an album release show on April 1st. It's like, that's not going to happen. No venues are available right now or anything. So I'm not going to put as much of a focus on that inquiry because you need to be realistic. So hit me up on the socials, hit me up on my website, ask any questions you have. I'll eventually get back to you. And if it's something that's like 3 to 4 months in advance, you'll have a better chance getting a response from me sooner because that's more of a realistic thing we can make happen. But otherwise, I'm happy to hear from you. I'm going to put you on my roster of artists to contact. I will check out your stuff, I promise. And if I have a show that I think you'd fit really well on, I'll be hitting you up. And if not, then I at least have you on my roster of artists to call upon when that time comes.
I think it's fair to say that if you also show up and you support the other acts that are going on, brownie points. So
yep, absolutely.
And it's just a great way to be a part of the scene, get out there and build your network and connect personally. It's always better.
It's so much better. Yeah. Show up and support, man.
Well, one last thing that I've been asking pretty much all the guests is, if there's a takeaway for you of the things that you've learned over the years, whether it's just through this conversation, specifically on live shows and booking or something else in general. But do you feel that there's a tip that you could pass along to other people that you feel like has been a secret to the success you've had so far in starting this company and playing in live bands and that sort of thing?
Yeah, man. Honestly, just don't be a dick. Be nice. Can I say that?
Yeah, you can say that.
Don't be a dick. And like, just have a good attitude and recognize that we're all in this same industry together. You know, like, sure, there's competition and there's ego, but at the same time, leave that at the door, man. Just show up, have a good time. There have been shows that I have both played and have observed where the band that's on the stage, or even myself playing to a crowd of 5 people, you know, I'm still pretending that there's 500 there. I'm pouring all of my heart and soul into that show. And I've seen that too, where bands will get up there and you're like, oh man, there's like 5 people here. These guys are just going to get up there and play their set and walk away. And they put on a spectacular show. That goes a long way, man, because the venue's looking at that and they're like, okay, cool. We want more people. Maybe the venues are like, okay, we needed to promote this a little bit more too. Like, that just goes a long way, man. So just be nice, because you never know when you're going to run into somebody who will bring value to you later. It's a small scene, man. The Twin Cities is large, but at the same time, it's small. And so word spreads really quick, and you'll get more work and have a longer career in the music scene if you're just nice and get along with everybody as best as you can. We all have our days, obviously, but understanding and recognizing that you might be having a day, or the person you're working with might be just having a rough day, and don't hold a grudge against them. Give them another chance. I always say, I don't hold a grudge. I just remember things. And I give everybody 3 chances. And if after 3 chances, they've proven to me over and over that just they're difficult to work with and maybe they're not the nicest all the time, I probably won't call upon you again, man. But if you're nice and just get along as best as you can with everyone, it's going to go a long ways. Yeah, actually, real quick story. I'll keep this as short as possible, but this happened once. My first retail job was Party City, right? And there was this kid that had started like a couple months after me. I was 17, 18 at the time, and he was like 16. He would come in with a cane and a top hat, and he was like one of those people that's just so smart, they're socially awkward. And all of my coworkers would give him guff all the time and kind of treat him weird. And I was the only one on staff that actually like would talk with him and hang out with him and grab lunch and whatever, you know, we'd chill, and it was sweet. And then we kind of lost touch. And then fast forward a couple years later, I was working at a music lessons place at the time, and he started taking voice lessons. And I was like, what's up, dude? Like, good to see you, Joe. Like, what's up, you know? And he made a point to tell me that he remembered that I was the one guy at work that actually treated him like a person and hung out. And I was like, cool, man, that's awesome. And then fast forward another couple years after that, I'm sitting at a class in McNally, and his brother was there, and he recognized me from just talking with his brother about this cool guy that, you know, he ran into at the music lessons place after working at Party City. And then another year after that class with his older brother, they asked me to help open a music lessons shop. They purchased this chain of music lessons, and I firmly believed in everything that the company was about and all that. And he right away, the older brother was like, dude, like, I wouldn't trust anybody else other than you. Like, you're great with people, and you're just like really sociable and just really kind. Will you be my manager? And that was a job I had for a little while, and I met so many more people in the scene through that job. And so all of that to say, I don't think I would have gotten that job that got me to the next point in my life if I would have been a dick to that dude at Party City.
Yeah.
It's like, what a weird chain of events. But again, like, the world's small, man, and you just never know who knows somebody. So just be nice, be kind, be generous, and be understanding, and it'll get you far. It's gotten me far so far, and I've thoroughly enjoyed my life. So let's keep on rocking, baby. Be nice.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. I couldn't agree more. All these things, all these decisions we all make goes to making our scene a better and better place.
Yes, sir.
So let's all contribute and do what we can to keep making it great for everybody. With that, I think that's a wrap, man. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you for doing this, Stephen. This is great.
Yeah, my pleasure. Please reach out to Coffee Break Entertainment if you think that's the right fit for you. Also connect with us if you are still listening to the episode, you got feedback. Always happy to hear it. I'll have my contact info in the show notes, Alec's contact info in the show notes. Tell a friend, share it, like, subscribe, all the good stuff. Thanks for listening. Till next time.